My trans teacher yelled at me in front of the whole class because I said there's only two genders, but I voice recorded her and sued her for $50,000. I go to a public high school in Orange County, California, and up until this year, school was my safe space. I was the kind of student who actually liked going to class, weird as that sounds. My favorite subject, science. I love facts, logic, provable stuff. I'm not political, not confrontational, just want to learn and graduate. But that all changed 2 months ago when Ms. Taylor took over our biology class. She introduced herself on the first day, said her pronouns were she, her, and emphasized, like 3 times, that using any other pronouns would be considered harassment. Okay, no big deal. I didn't even think it was weird. Teachers ask for respect, and I respect that. But instead of getting into cell structure or genetics like we were supposed to, she spent the whole first week talking about gender identity and decolonizing science. I'm not kidding. At first I thought maybe this was just an icebreaker kind of week. But then by Friday, we still hadn't opened the textbook. And when I asked, super politely, "Are we going to start biology next week?" she stared at me like I just insulted her entire existence. She said, "This is biology. Biology is political." I didn't say anything back, just nodded and sat down. I thought maybe I was overreacting. The next week, she hands out a worksheet that had over 30 different gender identities and told us we had to memorize them for a quiz. I raised my hand again. I said, "Respectfully, this doesn't feel like biology to me. Are we going to be tested on chromosomes or cells too?" Her whole face changed, like I flipped a switch. She said I was being passive-aggressive and accused me of trying to invalidate people's lived experiences. I was honestly shocked. I wasn't trying to invalidate anything. I just wanted to pass biology. Then she started ranting to the whole class about how people like me were the reason trans people get bullied. I looked around and half the class was just staring at me. I felt my face turn red, but I kept quiet. But the thing is, my buddy Ethan was sitting behind me, and without me knowing, he had started voice recording the whole thing. The real breaking point came the next Monday. We walked into class, and the board said gender spectrums and scientific bias. I rolled my eyes quietly. That's all I did. And Ms. Taylor saw me. She literally stopped her lecture and said, "Jake, would you like to share with the class what's so funny?" I said, "Nothing, ma'am. I was just surprised we're still not talking about biology. That's it. That's all I said." And she exploded. She screamed, "You are a danger to this classroom. You're perpetuating hateful ideology." Everyone just froze. She marched over to my desk, stood over me, and kept yelling. She said I needed to detox from cis privilege and told me to stand up and apologize for mocking marginalized people. I said, "I didn't mock anyone. I just want to study for the test." She slammed her hand on my desk and told me to leave the classroom immediately. I grabbed my backpack and walked out feeling humiliated. But guess what? Ethan had recorded that whole thing too. And this time it was even clearer. The screaming, the insults, everything. That night, I told my parents everything. Played the recording for them while we were eating dinner. My dad dropped his fork mid-bite. My mom's jaw was clenched. They were furious. Not even because she was trans, but because a teacher, any teacher, thought it was okay to humiliate a student for asking a question. My dad called the school board first thing the next morning. We got a meeting with the principal, and we brought the recording. But the moment we mentioned misconduct, the vibe changed. The principal suddenly got all cagey. He said, we'll look into it, but I want to be clear. Ms. Taylor has tenure. My mom said, "What does that have to do with anything?" And he said, "We need to be sensitive to issues of identity. These things are complicated." Complicated? She screamed at me in front of the class for asking about a science test. I said, "You do realize we have recordings, right?" He paused. Long pause. Then said, "If you share those, we could have legal issues due to privacy concerns." My dad laughed and said, "Buddy, I'm not the one who's going to have legal issues." We left the meeting and my dad said just one thing. "Get your backpack. We're seeing a lawyer." The lawyer listened to the recording and immediately said we had a solid case. Not just for verbal abuse, but for emotional distress, academic neglect, and potentially even discrimination against my right to a standard education. We filed a lawsuit the next day. It wasn't just against Ms. Taylor. It was against the district. We were asking for $50,000 in damages. At first, we thought nothing would happen, but then something wild happened. The record